Hello, Kelsey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
So excited to have you. So, we have today a phenomenal geologist with us. So, before we dive into the nuts and bolts, can you give us a big picture overview of what is a geologist exactly?
There are so many different fields of geology that someone could go into, but for me, I work at an environmental consulting firm called Cirrus, and so we're more focused on environmental issues and environmental remediation, natural resources, and the projects and goals that our clients want us to address. But geologists can produce maps. We can, model different systems, different Earth systems, including Earth's climate. There's interactions between climate and Earth's surface. There's a ton of different hats that a geologist can wear.
Oh, absolutely. So, what hat are you wearing now? So, what subfield of geology are you in?
So traditionally, I'm a structural geologist and a planetary geologist. So I think about how the Earth's surface breaks, how it bends, how it responds to stress. And the question that really tends to motivate me is how mountains form. How do they form on Earth in response to plate tectonics, and how do they form on other planets? So you might think, how does somebody who cares so much about structural geology end up in environmental consulting? Well, like the earth is really broken. The outside of the earth, the crust, the crunchy bits, they're really fractured. That's structure, right? And then fluid moves through those fractures. And in my former life as a professor, I thought about that fluid as being magma. And now, as an environmental consultant, I think about that fluid as being water that's potentially carrying contaminants. So
Mm.
I am working with clients to think about how fluids are moving through their systems, how they might be carrying contaminants with them, and then what the best course of action might be to clean that up or protect the public from it.
I am so grateful for people like you. So, as a conservation biologist, I work predominantly in wetlands. So, we think about this question a lot about what kind of pollutants are coming through our system and how to mitigate those. So grateful to have you on for very selfish reasons, too.
Okay, you're fine.
So, tell us a little bit more about a day in the life of you. So, what does a typical day look like? What kind of tasks are you working on?
So, the cool thing about the company that I work for is that we're relatively small, we're super flexible. The people that I work with are curious and they're excited and they're capable. And I feel really encouraged to wear whatever hat I think is going to serve us best that day, and whatever hat my supervisor is guiding me toward is going to help us most. Um, so no day is exactly the same for me because of that. So I might spend a certain portion of my day working on some statistics and trying to quantify what's going on with groundwater and what's going on with contaminants. I might spend part of my day working on reports and helping our clients develop the documents and the plans that are best going to help them guide, the project that we're going to complete. I can work on public relations when it comes to that. So I just got to finish working on a public communication document that helps people that live around some of these contaminated areas understand how we're going to help them and the investment that the clients made in their community and in their environment. And I get to do field work. So groundwater sampling, going out and investigating areas that have been cleaned up and making sure that they look appropriate and that they look like they're headed in the right direction. And then I also get to continue to do my planetary research. So that's doing GIS and helping with the GIS figures also for the rest of the company, and doing statistical analysis and planetary analog research. It is a lot of different roles that are all kind of happening in a given day.
Wow, certainly sounds like a lot of variety. Now, do these tasks come with seasonality or project flow, or is there a certain portion of your week that are dedicated to each element, like field work versus office work?
There is a seasonality to it. So field work does tend to pick up when it gets a little bit warmer, and that means too that the figure making side of the company, so I also help out a lot with our GIS team. We're, producing more figures, we're compiling more reports around the end times of that field work. And then for me, it looks like about uh, 3 to 5 days of travel in a month, and then the rest of the time I'm home kind of compiling those reports, working on figures, and working on my planetary research.
Ooh, so it sounds like you have a bit of a hybrid gig. So how much do you work from home?
But whenever I'm not in the field.
That's awesome. And so,
Yep.
in terms, I'm sure that's one of the appealing aspects as a fellow mom, of
Yeah.
one of the appealing aspects of the job. But what do you most enjoy about your job?
I thought that the only way that I could do the research that I cared about and make a difference and play with statistics and write. I loved to write. I thought the only way that I could do that was in an academic setting where, where it was highly competitive and highly driven. And it turned out that there are companies where you can do that. I know that that sounds crazy. That's probably obvious to other people, but it wasn't obvious to me when I was leaving school. There are places where you can go and be with people who are creative and passionate and who aren't in a super competitive environment against each other, who are supporting each other. And so I love that I get to work in an environment with these people, that I've kind of found them and they exist. I think that's really encouraging. And that I still get to do my planetary research. I left a very traditional R1 tenure track faculty role for this career path, and I am happier and healthier and more supported than I think I've ever been.
Mm.
And so that's what I'm really liking right now.
I'm so encouraged to hear that. And I know the listeners are too, because you're not alone in having that perception of academia is the only place you could pursue your own research questions and kind of be supportive and making a difference with these novel discoveries. So, I think part of that is systemic, and that academics, you've heard the phrase, academics breed academics, right? We
Yep.
teach what we know, we mentor what we know. And so that comes at the detriment of the students, who the only people they know in the field at all are all academics, right? And
Yep.
so I think this is one of the motivations for this podcast, is to expose these students to options outside of academia. And it sounds like in your experience that academia was really not the right fit for you. Certain elements were. I think you
Yeah.
shared that you loved to teach and you loved working with the
Hmm.
students and things like that. But now being in an environment that you feel much more supported, has really transformed your work life balance and your view of
Yep.
that work life harmony.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, on the flip side, no job is perfect, right? So, what aspects of your work do you find most challenging or perhaps less appealing?
So most challenging and less appealing are definitely not the same for me.
Okay.
I absolutely love a challenge. And so that's actually part of what's appealing to me. So this is my first, or I guess fall 2024 was my first semester outside of academia. I started this job at Cirrus in September, early September. And so right now, the biggest challenge has been learning an entirely new discipline of geology.
Mhm.
So I never took a hydrology class. I never took an environmental geology class. Just didn't do it. I I was so obsessed with structure and petrology from the get-go that I crammed my schedule with everything that I could in those content areas. So the idea that people were doing hydrological modeling just wasn't really anything that I had learned or concerned myself with. So right now, the most challenging part is this super steep learning curve, and I'm giving myself some grace with that and recognizing that it's going to take time to learn this, and I am working on it every day. It's super challenging, and I absolutely love it. Um, Another hard part of my job is, when you leave a faculty role, you have research funds.
Mm.
Hopefully, you've been awarded some external grants, and I was. And then when you go into a different academic role, or you go into an institutional role, or like me, I'm in an LLC now. You have to find a way to transfer those funds, and that's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of coordination across different groups, and so that's a challenge. And right now, I'm really missing more of my traditional field work that I was used to. I did a lot of mapping. I would spend a month in the field making maps of really cool structures. Um, and I miss that right now, but I know that it's temporary. I'm encouraged to apply for grants. I just applied for an NSF grant to go make a really cool map of an impact crater with my friend Kirby Runyon. Um, and so I know that we will work at that and we will bring those grants to this company, and then we'll kind of build out a new little nub, a new little niche of planetary work here. So I'm excited about the challenges, and I know that the less desirable parts will pass.
I gotta pause there for just a hot minute because what you're saying is when you left your academic role and started this industry position, you had grants that have not been fully spent, if you will, and the projects that hadn't been completed. So are you saying you
Yep,
were able to transfer some of that money into
all
this?
of that money.
That's
So
phenomenal.
okay, so this is wild to me. I didn't know this. And honestly, this kept me in academia for a long time. But like way past, honest to God, my expiration date when I should have left. I thought the only way that you could really do curiosity driven research, funded research, was to do it either at a research institution or to do it at a university. Or, maybe Smithsonian, Carnegie, something like that. Something like that. And that is not true. That's something that I didn't know wasn't true because I don't think my professors knew it wasn't true. You can work at a company and you can effectively kind of buy your time out, buy your salary out with grant money, with your own research money if you're willing to bring it in. Now, your company may not be willing to allow you to write grants on their time necessarily because you're preparing a proposal that is maybe less likely to get funded than something where like the money's already sitting there in a pot,
Mm.
and you're applying for that project, or the client, you have a relationship with them. But if you're willing to write a grant on, maybe on your own time, or get advice, or some support from a supervisor to let you have that time, then there's nothing stopping you from putting in a proposal to NASA or NSF. You can do that at an LLC, and then you're doing the cool science you want to do, but you're doing it with people you really like working with. Like if I'm putting in another proposal for a GIS related project, and if that gets funded, I'll get to work on that science, but I'll get to do a couple of different things. One, I'll get to work with the GIS team that I absolutely love. I've The people that I'm working with right now are so excited. They make great maps, and I'll get to be bringing that new style of mapping and new planetary maps into the company. But I'll also get to kind of be teaching again because I'll be sharing how to make a planetary map with folks who have lived in the earth and environmental side of map making, and who have been incredibly generous in teaching me and showing me how to make their style of maps.
Kelsey, you just sent shockwaves through academia right now. Do you know how
Hmm?
many professors are sitting in their position simply with, just got to finish out this grant project and I got to spend this money? You have just opened a door for them that no, you don't. You can
Yep.
transfer that grant money, that project to your next endeavor, even outside of academia. Like, mind blown. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that.
no problem. And I say that, but I hear what you're saying, but I so often don't think that that's the barrier to
Mm,
leaving. I think it's you get your identity so wrapped up as a faculty member because you're invested on so many different fronts. Especially if
mm,
you're, a geology professor, you are emotionally invested. You're mentally invested. If as a field geologist, you are physically invested. Do you know how much I had to run? I still run and I still do BMX and hot yoga and all kinds of stupid stuff, but I was physically even invested in preparing for my job. And so it's really hard to take your identity and make it something separate from your role when you're even in a town and environment that is completely saturated with a university.
mm.
Um, so it is freeing to know that you can move your grants. There are logistical ways to free yourself. Um, but you got to do the emotional work too.
Oh, I'm so glad you shared that as well because that was my biggest struggle. My foundation was in academia as well. And unlike you, I really loved the people that I worked with and I really loved the environment I was in. I probably could have retired from that job very happy. But when my kids were born, I couldn't do the hour and a half commute every day anymore. So
Yep.
had to make a tough shift. And I actually had to hire a coach to help me through that identity shift that was happening. I was tied so tightly around being a professor. I would meet a stranger who's like, "What do you do for a living?" I would always qualify, "Well, I used to be a professor, now I'm a career coach." I don't do that anymore. But it took some time to re
Yeah,
identify who I was as a person, as a professional. So thank you for bringing that up. So true.
no problem.
So thinking back, way back to your childhood, do you remember the first career you ever had the ambition to pursue?
Absolutely. I want to be a state trooper.
I love it. Tell me
Yep.
more.
Okay. My next door neighbor was a state trooper growing up, and he had a real nice pole barn and a good garage, and he had a couch in there, and he'd sit in there and watch cops. And when I would get home from school, I'd go watch cops with him. And I mean, from pre-K onward, did that. Um, and I still watch cops. But the thing is, what I realized that I actually liked doing, or the reasons why I thought I wanted to be a state trooper, I love my community. Anywhere where I've ever lived, I will entrench myself. And I don't know if it's because I like being in people's business or if it's because I think it's because I actually really care, which is kind of scary. Um, but I love being invested in my community. I love teaching people. I like helping people solve problems. I like a lot of longitude and latitude in my job and being able to kind of have a broad jurisdiction. And I like to drive fast. And I can uh I can drive fast or ride fast at the bike track and that's fine. That's going to meet that need. But the older I got, the more I realized that there were other ways that I could fulfill that ambition to be in my community and to
Mm.
serve people around me, and to be outdoors and do some exploring. And so found geology that way.
Ah, what a beautiful story. And there certainly still are some threads that have carried through in your life as you've described. But also, and I talked to a lot of my pre-meds about this because their primary reason of going into medicine is because they like science and they want to help people. And what you're describing is there's lots of ways to help people and serve your community. And I don't think geology would have been the first thing on people's list, but it's such a good story of what an impact that would have. And that's not just local community. That affects everything downstream and around, right? So,
Yeah. Well, I think we grow up knowing what certain jobs mean. Okay,
mhm.
like my mom was a teacher, My dad always worked in a factory. I knew what teaching looked like. Okay. And I kind of knew what being a professor would look like. I could imagine that. And so it's like somebody saying, "Oh, I love lasagna." Okay. Do you love lasagna or do you love noodles and pasta sauce? Because there's actually a lot of things you can do with that, right? And so for me, I have all these pieces of things that I love, but because I was only familiar with lasagna, I just thought I loved lasagna. It turns out I can make pretty much anything with that combination. I can make a lot of things that I'm going to find satisfying. I might have to add a few different things I wasn't expecting here or there. Like I have a YouTube channel where I get to teach people, and that kind of scratches that teaching itch. Um, I work in a community garden and help folks out that way. So I'm outdoors and I'm interacting with people. I wasn't really expecting that to pop up in my life. Um, but it meets that need. It's all the pieces that I needed to be happy. I'm just finding them in different ways.
What a beautiful metaphor. I love that. Just making lasagna in a different way, but it's still
Yeah,
got the main ingredients that you love. So, and I think
yeah,
this kind of brings up the idea of it's very easy for us to get tunnel vision because as human beings, we find comfort in what we know and what we
yeah,
understand. And so that's why you predominantly see like lawyer, doctor, police, fireman, like teacher.
yeah,
All of those are the things that we're exposed to early in life. And that is comforting because you have an idea of what that'll be like. But there are so many more options out there. And I think that's where someone like a career coach or career services can really help you expose you to those other options. Now, maybe you'll still come all full circle back into teaching, but how much more confidence will you have that that's the right field for you now that you've explored the other pastures, if you will?
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, as we're sort of, oh, I do want to ask this. So, you had mentioned that you had been a professor. And so
hmm
that sounds like a major milestone in your career. So if you had to hit the major milestones from high school on, what would those be?
So I think for me, my major milestones have been my failures, which sounds pretty terrible. Um, but I've chosen to learn from them. And so it's not really like the things that I've um, finished in a traditional sense as a success, but it's the things that I've really struggled with. So for me, went through undergrad pretty fine. I went to field camp. That was a huge turning point for me because that's where I really knew, okay, this is what I'm good at. I'm good at field work. I'm good at teaching people field work. I'm good at leading. I'm good at this part of this job. Um, but then left and went for a PhD at a really great, prestigious PhD program at Purdue. And within a semester, oh, and got like a very nice, prestigious fellowship to go with it that was going to cover my whole PhD. And then my first semester of grad school, I took orbital dynamics and learned that I didn't know Fortran. Didn't know that that was going to be required for that class, and I ended up having to withdraw. It was
Mm.
hugely humiliating and humbling and wonderful for me because I realized, okay, this is something you don't know how to do. You're gonna have to try something else. So at the end of the semester, I switched advisors and took a bunch of classes in geotechnical engineering instead, which was super helpful. Met my maid of honor, who I now work with, and has become a great friend. um, I gave back the fellowship. So that's the other thing is I have a weird sense of like, I don't know how there's like something that's deeply ingrained in me about I'm not going to take something I don't deserve or I didn't earn. Like
Mm.
I'm real weird about that kind of stuff. So I gave back the fellowship when I switched advisors. I didn't feel like it was right for me to keep something and pursue a different path that I didn't originally agree to. Um, and my advisor was really willing to, Terry West, great guy, was totally willing to let me try different things. And so he let me do some projects for the Department of Natural Resources. He let me get my teaching license, my Indiana State K-12 teaching license for high school earth science and math. It just let me be curious. It was wonderful. So I took that failure and I did not finish a PhD there. I left with a master's degree. Thought I would never go back. Started teaching high school math at a small rural STEM school, and then suffered a miscarriage. And I shouldn't say suffered a miscarriage. My husband and I worked through and made it through a miscarriage, a bit of a later stage miscarriage. It was really hard. Um, and I thought it couldn't get any harder. And then someone I worked with told the students um, what had happened.
Oh,
And it was a massive betrayal. It was one of the worst things I have ever suffered through at work. And so I thought, well, in a way, this is a challenge. And so maybe this is my sign that I shouldn't be working around these people. I need to go back to school. And so, and I need to find a PhD program that is going to encourage me in becoming a parent because I ain't done. Like, I don't care if I have to try 15 times and then adopt, which we ended up with actually 2 more miscarriages and then finally got the stuff to work and had the first of 2 awesome kids. But the thing is, I was not about to quit at all. And so this is going to sound kind of cocky. I interviewed a bunch of advisors potentially for my PhD because I knew what I was looking for the second time around. And I said, look, I know y'all can't tell me that I can't have a baby during my PhD. I know that you're not supposed to tell me that. Tell me what your opinion is on that. And I won't say anything, and I'm still never going to name names in that. But if you're not okay with that, and this is a major life goal for me, I need you to tell me now. And almost everyone that I was interviewing with told me that they would rather me not have a baby in their lab, that that's not where they wanted my priorities to be during my PhD. The person I decided to go to grad school with, Christian Klemczak at University of Georgia, said, I don't care what you do as long as you get your work done, and I will be there for you the whole way. And I knew that I was going to work for him. I was like, that's the guy if he's going to support me. So that was a huge turning point in finding somebody willing to support that dream for me. Went to start my PhD with him. We had a great time, persevered through the end of it, and got my job. And then, the other major milestone is leaving, is making the decision to leave academia, knowing that there had to be more. There had to be a career that fulfilled me where I was also happy and also respected. And that was really hard, but that was a turning point for me. And so, when you have turning points that are failures, it can kind of make you terrified that you're going to fail again and then you're going to have to change again. But it can also give you kind of a sense of acceptance that that's going to happen, right? Like at some point there is going to be something I don't expect coming, and I can handle it because I've handled every other time that's popped up,
Oh, yeah. If there's not a listener on the edge of their seat right now, I would be shocked. Like, I'm feeling so moved by that story. And one, I cannot gloss over the fact that a coworker shared something so private about your life publicly
With
with the students.
teenagers.
And I wish I can say that's the only time I've heard that happening. It happened to me. We had a former dean, she ended up being let go, thank goodness, who said in a budget meeting that, oh, Cassie, you have big news to share, and made me announce my pregnancy in front of the whole college. Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge that has happened to you, to me, likely others listening. It's not okay. It's
Yeah.
not okay. And
Nope.
so, but I think what your story also reveals is that you're finding something out of the situation that will personally help you. to help you grow, to get you to that next stage. And so through tragedy, some of the greatest successes of your life have come. And just the personal struggles you went through, I think also show so many people out there, if you're not experiencing career fulfillment, don't negate the fact that you might not be having that life fulfillment, that your career may be a roadblock to you living the life you want. So in your case, you wanted to start a family, you wanted to build a family, and you wanted to do it now. You didn't want to wait till
Yeah.
your PhD was over. And knowing that with such confidence can help you find the right position. And what a difference between the two PhD programs that you went through,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Just, and I had the same experience. I did not look very hard when I was looking for master's programs. Well, I
Uh-huh.
was actually looking for PhD programs, and I didn't like any of them that I had applied to, and I was in a panic. But fortunately, my undergrad advisor had said, "Hey, I know somebody, but they only have masters at their university. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll at least meet with him." Perfect match. So I
Yep.
ended up doing the masters first. But then when I applied for PhDs the next time, man, like you, I interviewed 11
Yes.
different PhD
Yep.
advisors and I asked them those tough questions and ended up with the perfect fit. And
Yeah.
I think doing your due diligence there is important. And it doesn't just end with grad school. I think when you go into job interviews, have a similar mentality about it. It's got to be a mutually good fit. They're not interviewing
Yeah.
you, you're also interviewing them. So,
Yep.
yeah, such a
And
great story.
I think when you come out of grad school, especially if you're coming out of a PhD and you're applying for academic roles right away, and on top of that, you have that kind of built-in mentality that like that's that is the promised land is academia. If you can just get that professorship role, then
Mm.
you know you'll have all of your dreams, you'll have everything that you wanted. And what you end up doing is just being so grateful for one opportunity. If you're given that opportunity, you're so grateful for that one opportunity that you don't question whether or not it's the right opportunity.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I had at the end of my PhD, I think I had 8 on-campus interviews, which is insane, and I get that that's kind of nuts. And I ended up with 3 offers, and I took the one that was most accommodating to me and my partner to make sure that we could both work on campus, and we could have daycare that was close to it. It was a real family decision on that. But I could have asked more questions. I should have looked for more red flags, and I could have questioned, am I just so grateful to have the opportunity to be R1 tenure track right out of my PhD that I didn't question whether or not it was right for me?
Mm. Kelsey, that is such a powerful point. And I personally think I just got super lucky because I ended up graduating a year early from my PhD to accept my dream job. And it ended up being a really great fit, which is a rarity from my experience in terms of academics. So, being in
Yeah,
academia, most of them are horror stories, but mine was not. It was really wonderful. So, yeah.
that's
So,
good.
yeah, as we wrap up this portion of the interview, but we're going to dive even deeper in the extended interview, what advice would you want to leave our listeners who are pursuing a similar career?
Okay. I got a couple pieces of advice. One that's going to be generic, and then one that I hope it's okay if I share for listeners who identify as women or were
Mm.
socialized as women. Generically, you can have the things you want. You can do the things you want at work without the title you thought you had to have to do it.
Mm.
Okay. So that is, I think that's a huge piece of advice. You can teach, you can do research, you can do community outreach, and you don't have to be a faculty member to make those things possible. Okay. Take what you deserve. Nobody is going to give it to you.
Mm.
Right. That's the other thing. You deserve to take the things in life that feed your soul.
Mm.
And however you need to get that inside of academia, if you can get it, great. If you have to go a different route or you want to go a different route, there is no shame in that. Do the things that feed your soul. Everything else will work out. It just will. Then, if you have, like I grew up socialized as a woman, and I had a really negative outlook on failure until I actively started failing and realizing it wasn't the end of the world.
Mm.
Okay. So I think my mama would have said, fail like the men do. Like, don't let it be. You know, it doesn't say something critical and life ending about you to fail at something. You are capable of bouncing back and doing something even better. So, so I would say that, and then find people who reinforce that message for you.
Mm.
So I have had a broad spectrum of mentorship, especially from senior women in science. I have had neglect and the absolute worst of the worst, but then I have had really wonderful women who
Mm.
have shown me how to support other women around me, how to lift each other up. My current supervisor right now is one of them, Jess, and then there's women I know in STEM like Deborah Buchkowski, who's been a huge role model for me and a mentor that I wouldn't trade for the world. They have been kind to me, and I am still learning to accept that kindness. So I would say fail like the men do, but then find female mentorship that care about you
Mm-hmm.
and accept the care.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Beautifully said. And I think in terms of finding those people that support, sometimes we look at seeking support as failure. And I want to push against that. It's
Yeah.
not failure, it's smart. What elite athlete going to the Olympics doesn't have a coach? Like, come on.
Yeah.
So get your support. Give yourself that opportunity to progress in your career, to grow, to do so in a supportive way, and to someone out there to let you know and reassure you, yeah, you shouldn't be treated that way, or that shouldn't be what's happening. You're not alone. And it can feel very isolating if you don't have those people in your life. So seek them out.
Yeah. Yep.
Wonderful. Well, before we close out the initial part of the episode here, you had mentioned a YouTube channel. So I want to give you an opportunity to share that with our audience and tell us about what the YouTube channel is about and then how to find it.
Sure. So it is a geology YouTube channel. It traditionally teaches structural geology techniques. You will know when you see it because it's just my hands. I've got just a document camera and I work through different problems. It's especially helpful if you're preparing for your ASBOG, so your State Board of Geology exam, especially the FG part, the Fundamentals of Geology exam. I've got playlists where I go over here's what to expect, here's the type of questions you might see, and working through those exams. It's not endorsed by ASBOG, but it works. And then we're going to be adding some environmental stuff. So I actually just got permission last week to start adding environmental content and statistics content that I'm learning at work, and then start repackaging that and giving it to anybody who wants to learn. It's KC Structural Geology. So
Okay.
KC is in Kelsey Crane Structural Geology.
Oh, what a great resource. So, for those of you curious about this field, preparing for that exam, or just wanting to learn more, definitely check that out.